A Russian cargo ship is sitting at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, 2,500 meters down, off the coast of Spain. 2 crew members are dead. Their bodies were never found. The ship's official manifest said it was carrying cranes and empty containers. Routine freight, nothing unusual. But when Spanish investigators questioned the captain under pressure, he told them something very different. He said the ship was carrying components for 2 nuclear reactors, the kind used in submarines. And according to a CNN investigation published today, he believed he was taking them to North Korea. The ship was called the Ursa Major, also known as Sparta III. It was a Russian-flagged cargo vessel with a history of moving military equipment. It had previously been used to evacuate Russian gear from Syria. Its owner, Oberon Logistics, is a state-linked Russian logistics company that, just months before the voyage, publicly announced it had been licensed to carry nuclear material. The ship sank on December 23, 2024, about 60 miles off the coast of Spain. That was 5 weeks ago in calendar terms. But the full picture of what happened, what the ship was carrying, who attacked it, and why the Spanish government stayed quiet for 2 months, has only now come into focus through a CNN investigation. And what this investigation reveals is extraordinary. This may not have been an accident. It may not have been a mechanical failure. A Spanish maritime investigation suggests the initial breach in the Ursa Major's hull may have been caused by a rare type of torpedo, a Barracuda supercavitating torpedo, a weapon so specialized that only a handful of nations in the world are believed to possess it. If you want fast, fact-based coverage of the stories that actually matter, without the noise and the spin, subscribe right now, because this story is moving fast, and the implications go well beyond one sunken ship. Let's go back to December 2024. The Ursa Major departs from the Russian port of Ust-Luga in the Gulf of Finland on December 11th. Its official manifest listed the cargo as 2 large manhole covers, 129 empty shipping containers, and 2 large Liebherr cranes. Its stated destination was Vladivostok on Russia's Pacific coast. That route, on its face, makes almost no sense. Vladivostok is accessible by rail from Western Russia, an extensive, functioning rail network. You don't load sensitive freight onto a ship and sail it around the entire world unless you don't want anyone to know where it's actually going. The Spanish investigation picked up on exactly that. It notes the unlikely choice of a round-the-world sea voyage to deliver cranes and empty containers between 2 Russian ports, given the extensive rail infrastructure that connects them. The ship moved south along the French coast. Portuguese Navy aircraft and vessels tracked it through their waters. 2 Russian military ships, the Ivan Gren and the Alexander Otakovsky, escorted it. 2 military vessels, escorting a cargo ship carrying, officially, cranes and empty containers. On the morning of December 22nd, the Portuguese Navy dropped the tail. About 4 hours later, already in Spanish waters, the ship slowed dramatically. Spanish rescuers radioed to check if it was in distress. The crew replied that everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. Not even close. About 24 hours later, the ship deviated sharply from its course. At 11:53 a.m. UTC on December 23rd, it issued an urgent call for help. 3 explosions had struck its starboard side, likely near the engine room. 2 crew members were killed. The ship listed heavily in the water. Social media footage captured the moment, a massive vessel visibly tilting, helpless. The 14 surviving crew members evacuated on a lifeboat and were picked up by a Spanish rescue boat, the Salvamar Draco. Then things got stranger. At 7:27 p.m., a Spanish military vessel arrived on scene, but 30 minutes later, one of the Russian military escort ships, the Ivan Gren, ordered nearby vessels to maintain a 2 nautical mile distance and demanded the rescued crew be returned immediately. The Spanish maritime rescue authorities refused. They sent a helicopter to check for remaining survivors. Spanish rescue personnel entered the ship. Footage seen by CNN shows a rescuer attempting to enter the engine room and finding it sealed. The rescuer checked the living quarters and looked inside containers, finding 2 filled with trash, fishing nets, and other equipment. At this point, the Ursa Major was still afloat. According to the source familiar with the Spanish investigation, it appeared stable and unlikely to sink soon. Then, at 9:50 p.m., the Ivan Gren fired a series of red flares over the scene. 4 explosions followed. 4 seismic signatures were registered at that exact time, in that approximate location. the pattern resembling underwater mines or quarry blasts, according to the Spanish National Seismic Network. By 11:10 p.m., the Ursa Major was gone, a ship that was stable, that was still floating, that rescuers had just been aboard, sunk within 90 minutes of Russian red flares. The official Russian explanation for all of this? Their own ship owner called it a targeted terrorist attack. But here's what they didn't explain: why a Russian military vessel then returned to the wreckage and apparently set off 4 more explosions on the seabed. To understand why this story is so significant, you need to understand what was allegedly on board and who was supposed to receive it. The Russian captain, named in the investigation as Igor Anisimov, told Spanish investigators he believed the Ursa Major would be diverted to Rason, a North Korean port, to deliver the 2 reactors. He also told investigators the cranes aboard were there specifically to assist with delivery of a sensitive cargo upon arrival in Rason. Let that sit for a moment. 2 submarine nuclear reactors, heading to North Korea. The Spanish investigation suggests the reactors were likely the VM-4SG model, a type commonly found in Russia's Delta IV class ballistic missile submarines. These are not small components. These are the power cores of weapons systems designed to carry nuclear missiles across ocean floors undetected. Mike Plunkett, senior naval platforms analyst for Jane's Defense Intelligence, said any decision by Russia to transfer this technology to North Korea is not undertaken lightly. It's only done between very close allies, and if true, described it as a major move by Moscow that would be very troubling, particularly if you're South Korea. And the timing matters enormously. The ship set sail just 2 months after Kim Jong-un sent at least 10,000 North Korean troops to Russia to fight in Ukraine, specifically in the Kursk region. The Spanish investigation notes that North Korea has openly urged Moscow to share its nuclear technical expertise, and it is likely such demands intensified after that troop deployment. This is the transactional logic of the Russia-North Korea partnership at its most raw: troops for technology, soldiers in exchange for submarines. Do you think this was a sanctioned Western military operation, or something else entirely? Let us know in the comments. This story has layers that go deep. In December 2025, North Korea released images of what it described as its first nuclear submarine, an 8,700-ton vessel, with Kim Jong-un photographed grinning at the construction site. The images only showed the sealed hull. No evidence of a functioning nuclear reactor inside was visible. The timing of that reveal, exactly 1 year after the Ursa Major sank, is not lost on analysts. Was the reactor shipment interrupted in time? Or had North Korea already received what it needed through other means? That question remains entirely open. Here is the detail that almost no one is talking about. After the Ursa Major sank, the Spanish government said the wreckage lies at a depth of 2,500 meters, and that recovering the ship's data recorder would require significant technical resources and risks. A Spanish lawmaker, himself a former merchant marine captain, told CNN he was skeptical. He pointed out that modern black boxes typically float to the surface with locator beacons. His conclusion? Someone already has it. Whether that's Spain or Russia, he doesn't know. 1 week after the Ursa Major sank, the Yantar, a Russian vessel officially designated a research ship but widely accused of espionage and undersea sabotage in NATO waters, appeared over the wreck site. It stayed for 5 days. Then 4 more explosions were detected. Russia wasn't just watching the scene. Russia was actively working the seabed. 2 men did not come home from this voyage. The 2 crew members killed in the December 23rd explosions were identified as second mechanic Nikitin and mechanic Yakovlev. Their bodies were never recovered. They were engineers. They kept an engine room running. There is no indication they knew what was actually in their ship's hold. Men who signed on for a voyage to Vladivostok and ended up at the center of what may be one of the most consequential covert operations in recent memory. Their families received no public explanation. Russia's official response came from the ship's owner, Oberon Logistics, which called it a terrorist attack and noted that a 50-centimeter by 50-centimeter hole had been found in the vessel's hull, with the damaged metal facing inward, and that the ship's deck was strewn with shrapnel. Metal facing inward. That means the force came from outside the hull. Something struck it from the water. The surviving 14 crew members were brought ashore at the port of Cartagena, where they were debriefed by Spanish police and investigators. Cartagena is a busy southern Spanish city, a port, a naval base, a tourist destination in warmer months. The sight of 14 Russian sailors coming ashore after their ship exploded at sea would have drawn attention even without the larger context. The Russian captain was brought in for questioning. He was reluctant to discuss the ship's contents, reportedly fearing for his personal safety. Under sustained pressure from investigators, asked to clarify what he had meant by manhole covers on the manifest, he finally told them the truth. 2 nuclear reactor components, submarine-grade. Whether they contained nuclear fuel, he could not confirm. Think about that position for a moment. A ship captain, sitting in a Spanish port, aware that his escort vessel just sank the ship he'd been standing on hours earlier. Aware that 2 of his men were dead at the bottom of the sea. And knowing that whatever he said next could determine whether he made it back to Russia, or whether that became complicated. He was sent home with his crew days later. CNN subsequently contacted a man matching the captain's name and description. He denied any involvement with the Ursa Major and said he was retired. The Spanish public was kept in the dark for 2 months. The Spanish government only released a statement on February 23, 2025, after pressure from opposition lawmakers. The opposition lawmaker who pushed hardest, Juan Antonio Rojas Manrique, told CNN he suspected the government was concealing information. His words were measured but pointed. When someone doesn't give you full information, you at least suspect they are hiding something. Consider what the Spanish coastline near Cartagena looks like. Sun, resorts, fishing villages, Mediterranean calm. And 60 miles offshore, the scattered wreckage of a Russian military cargo ship, possibly containing the remnants of nuclear reactor technology, at 2,500 meters depth, in a seabed now apparently visited and altered by both unknown actors and Russian intelligence operatives. The beach hotels are still open. The tourist guides still describe the southern coast as a paradise. And somewhere below the surface of that same sea, the full truth of what happened on December 23, 2024, is sitting in silence. Here is the core problem that no government has answered publicly. If the Ursa Major was carrying nuclear reactor components to North Korea, and if a Western military power used a covert torpedo strike to stop that transfer, what happens the next time Russia tries? A different ship, a different route, a different cargo description. There is no indication Moscow has abandoned its interest in upgrading North Korea's submarine capability. If anything, the Pyongyang-Moscow relationship has deepened since this ship went to the bottom of the ocean. And then there is the nuclear contamination question. The U.S. military has twice dispatched a rare WC-135R nuclear detection aircraft, a nuke sniffer, normally used to monitor Russian Arctic nuclear activity or Iranian nuclear programs, to fly over the wreck site. The first flight was August 28th last year. The second was February 6th of this year. These are not cheap, routine flights. They are serious, targeted deployments. The aircraft's base spokesperson confirmed the WC-135R's role in nuclear debris collection and analysis, but declined to share mission findings. The Spanish government has said nothing about radiation concerns along its southern coastline, but the fact that the U.S. flew a nuclear sniffer over the wreck twice, months apart, is its own kind of statement. Step back from the individual events, the explosions, the flares, the sinking, the seismic signatures, and look at what this story actually represents. If the CNN investigation's conclusions hold up, what happened 60 miles off the Spanish coast on December 23, 2024, was a covert Western military operation designed to stop a nuclear technology transfer between Russia and North Korea, conducted quietly, in international waters, without any public acknowledgement from any party involved. The incident occurred in the final weeks of the Biden presidency, when Russia's position in Ukraine was strengthening and U.S. decision-makers were navigating a desire to avoid direct military escalation with Moscow. That context matters. A covert operation of this kind, if that's what it was, would have required extremely precise calculation. Stop the transfer. Leave no fingerprints. Don't give Russia a public provocation to respond to. Whether or not that calculation was made correctly remains unclear. Russia's response, returning the Yantar to the wreck site and apparently detonating the remains on the seabed, suggests Moscow understood exactly what had happened, even without saying so publicly. The weapons technology question is equally unresolved. The Spanish investigation proposed that a Barracuda supercavitating torpedo, capable of near-silent hull penetration without an explosive charge, caused the initial breach. The Janes analyst consulted by CNN offered a different theory: a limpet mine, a shaped charge placed directly against the hull by a diver or underwater vehicle. Both options point to a sophisticated, deliberate, professionally executed attack. Neither option points to an accident, and both options raise the same uncomfortable question: which country did this? Multiple Western intelligence and security officials described the incident as strange when approached by CNN, or suggested some of the Spanish investigation's conclusions seemed far-fetched, but none provided an alternative explanation for the initial blasts or for the Ivan Gren's acute reaction to its escort vessel's sinking. That silence, from people who deal in classified information professionally, is its own form of confirmation that something significant occurred here. Watch what happens next in the Russia-North Korea relationship. Watch whether Pyongyang formally reveals a functional nuclear submarine. Watch whether the Spanish investigation ever becomes public in full. And watch whether the United States, or any NATO ally, ever acknowledges any operational involvement in what happened to the Ursa Major. Because right now, 2 nuclear reactors are either sitting at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, or they aren't. And that distinction matters enormously to every country in the world that has a strategic stake in what North Korea's submarines can do. This story is still developing. The wreckage is still at the bottom of the sea. The Spanish investigation is still not fully public. And the Russia-North Korea partnership that made this shipment possible, or at least plausible, is still very much active. What do you think actually happened here? Was this a Western military operation? Was it something else entirely? Drop your analysis in the comments. I read every one. And subscribe right now, because when this story moves, and it will, you need to be here for it.